This is my channel's weekly compendium, ending Monday, October 2nd, 2023. Case file number 1293, written by Embarrassed Form 247, When the Universe Plays Doctor. I went to my local emergency room because I was having severe abdominal pain. After a CAT scan and x-rays, the doctor came back and said, "It's huge." I asked, "What is?" He said, "It's big." I said, "I got that. What is it?" He answered, "It's a cyst on your ovary." I said, "Okay, what are we going to do about it?" He referred me to an OBGYN surgeon who sent me for an MRI and more x-rays. And I never had a stitch in my life at 45 years old. No children, started menopause at age 30, and my periods were very painful every month. So he explained the cyst on my ovary, and they would cut me from my breastbone all the way down and remove just the ovary. I asked if they could just give me a hysterectomy, being that I couldn't bear children, and having severe pain every month, etc. And he said no. I continued to try to convince him to just take it all because it didn't work, and I was experiencing a lot of pain. But no, he would only remove just one ovary. So on the day of the surgery, once they cut me open, they discovered that it was not a cyst in the ovary, but two large, mature dermoids. One the size of a football, and one the size of a large candy Easter egg that both had hair, teeth, and nails, and had attached to my kidney and blood vessels in my leg. None of the tests showed these, so I was a triplet in embryo. So they immediately closed me back up because they were not able to handle such a complicated procedure at that moment. This is also when I learned that you can't get true results from any kind of scans or x-rays. So I am now published in textbooks at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine. I also had vulvar cancer that was discovered once they removed the dermoids. I was diagnosed with breast cancer 2 years later, and rectal cancer 2 years after that, then throat and vocal cord cancer in 2019. I come from a large family with no history of cancer. The last 3 cancers were misdiagnosed. Lucky that I did not accept the findings and persuaded more tests and so on. So I am officially weird and strange, but my body is strong, and I'm still kicking, no matter what the universe throws at me. Written by Cosmic Chameleons, the Pier of Peril. I was 16, just got my permit to drive, and I went to meet my then boyfriend at our favorite park to walk the trails in. This park happened to be outside of a rough and nearly empty part of town. It had a wide river running through the park, with a L-shaped pier that had railings on all sides of the pier, only one way on or off of it. My boyfriend called and said he couldn't make it, and not wanting to go home just yet, I got out of my car and started to walk around the park. It was 2:30 p.m., and I could still see the breeze going through the trees all around, and how the leaves were just beginning to change their colors. I had on a hot pink jacket, jean skirt, and boots, and I walked out onto the pier. I had realized I was underdressed as the wind coming off the water was too chilly. I had a gut feeling telling me to leave, but I brushed it off. I finally sat down at the end of the pier, leaning my back against the railings, and stared down at the water below running over the jagged rocks. Without any warning, I suddenly heard footsteps from behind at the beginning of the pier. I quickly glanced over at a man who had blue rope in between his hands, circling up each end of it in either hand, creating a line between. As my brain was putting that piece of information together, he said, "What are you doing out here all alone?" I couldn't think of anything to say, but I stood up and then saw he was dragging along a medium-sized black and white fuzzy dog that was tied in a makeshift collar and leash to another piece of rope that was looped around the man's upper arm. "You're too pretty to be sitting out here by yourself." He walked towards me with a smirk on his face, looking down at the rope. He was roughly 10 feet away. Again, there was only one way on or off the pier, and I would have to run right by him to escape, which didn't seem to be an option. The only other way was to jump off the pier, but with the rushing water and rocks below, that didn't seem like a viable option either. At that moment, my stomach sank completely. The hair on my arms and my neck stood at attention, and still do to this day when I think about this. The fear, dread, and panic were overwhelming in my chest. I knew whatever was going to happen next was going to be absolutely horrible. The next few events happened quickly. I backed up until I bumped into the railing and squeaked out a small, "Please." The man closed the distance between us and was about 5 feet away. As I balled up my fist to at least put up some semblance of a fight, suddenly the dog planted his feet and started growling ferociously. The man pulled on the makeshift leash to get the dog to come on, but the dog turned to go the other way, still growling. This distracted the man for a brief moment and he turned, kicked the dog, then turned his gaze back onto me. Mind you, he still has his hands bound in the rope. The man took one more step and that's when the dog had enough. He planted his feet one more time, swung his head back and forth violently until the leash came off, bared his teeth and clamped down on the man's Achilles heel. The man bent over, screaming in pain. He tried to get the dog off of him, but his hands were bound. The dog released for half a second and bit into the man's calf. The man fell to the ground and was struggling to get his hands out of the ropes that were meant for me. I seized my opportunity and quickly moved by him and took off running. I ran until I got to my car, and as I pulled away, I saw the dog running out of the park in a full sprint. I know without a doubt that dog saved my life that day. Case file number 1295, written by Naughty Spider, glimpsing into the Victorian epoch. My ex, many years ago, was helping his friends move into a Victorian terrace. These houses have a front door that opens into the street and a long corridor with rooms that come off of it on the ground floor. As he arrived, he was carrying a box from them through the front door and walked past an open room door, front parlor, to briefly see an old woman sitting in the sitting chair looking to be staring straight ahead to what he thought was a TV. He took her to be a relative. As he got to his friends in the next room, he joked that someone had already made themselves at home. They didn't know what he was talking about. They all then went in the front parlor room. No old lady, no furniture, no TV. It was like he'd seen a glimpse of an old life for the split second he'd walked past the doorway. Bonus file written by Dirt Diggler 6667, Inside the Room of Fear. My brother and I had the typical horror movie experience. Parents divorced when I was 9 and my brother was 7. Moved around until our mom found a nice house for a cheap rent to own. She didn't tell us because she didn't want us to worry about it, but 3 people had been killed in a break-in in a year prior. So we move in and we all get to pick our own rooms. I'm drawn to the frontmost room with 3 big bay windows on one side and a small closet in the corner. My brother across a short hall, a bathroom between the 2 rooms. 2 weeks in, one night I could hear my closet door slowly creak all the way open. Every night for about a week this happened, and it scared me because I had completely shut the door every time. I told my mom I wanted the doorknob replaced, and so she obliged and I got a new one. This did absolutely nothing for me, so I started talking to the neighbor's kids. This was when I found out what happened to the family in the house before us. I was horrified. I was sleeping in the room of the child that lived in the house. He loved to play with his toys in the closet. One of the kids I would play basketball with was good friends with the kid. I never felt alone in the room, just watching. My brother, on the other hand, was enjoying his life to the fullest because I didn't have the heart to tell him about the house. I did talk to my mom about it though. She was very appreciative that I didn't tell my brother. A few more weeks go by, and my mom is getting ready for work and she's locked out of her room. We do everything we can to get it open, and finally we do. All of us late for work and school. But then this becomes a recurring thing. She's locked out of her room with more frequency every few weeks. My brother and I start seeing this shadow. There are 3 arches in the house that connect the living room to the dining table and kitchen. So my mom hangs curtains on 2 of them to keep the sun out of the big TV we had at the time. She buys one of those light things that you plug into the wall to melt the little cubes of wax, and it really illuminates one of the arches. My brother and I start seeing this shadow. I come out of my room from a hard night of playing Black Ops 1. Good times. I see what looks like a woman's shadow. I call out to my mom, but there's no answer. Looking a little hard, I can tell that this isn't even my mom's build either. This woman is tall and slender. My mom is 5'6" and more of a normal build. The shadow is more like 5'11" and pretty skinny. I open my brother's door and tell him to come out. We were both on COD. We're both freaked out and don't want to go over to see who or what it is, because why would we? This obviously doesn't look like our mom, and it isn't moving at all. My brother comes into my room, we lock the door, and we both go sleep there. The next day, during my weekly basketball session with the neighbor's kids, I asked what the lady that lived in the house looked like, and I described exactly the type of person we saw the night before. I don't finish playing basketball and go home to tell my mom what had been going on last night. She brushes it off, saying, "We freaked each other out because now we both know what happened in the house before." Literally the same morning, she is once again locked out of her room by nothing. This was the last straw for her. She removed the doorknob from her door because swapping it with a new one had done nothing. She eventually just gets one that doesn't have a lock on it at all. We beg her to just stay in one of our rooms, and if that shadow is there again, we'll wake her up and show her. She stayed with my brother for one night, and once again I was going to go get water and I just saw it. Just standing there in front of the bright light shining up from the curtain. I wake them both up and my mom looks visibly scared for the first time of my life at the time. She calls out if someone was there, and she sees that there's no movement from behind the curtain. She inches into the living room to turn on the light. Something we as young kids definitely are not going to do. And that shadow is gone. She runs past the arches and nothing. No one is there and nothing is there to cast a shadow. And I see her wide-eyed and breathing heavily. She knows we haven't been kidding or messing around with her now. Case file number 1296, written by Mango Fats, the Russian Time Travelers. This happened the time a friend and I were sitting out in my backyard, smoking, drinking coffee, and literally just chillin'. Our chairs faced the main road through the city, and we just watch cars because of Midwest boredom. It's 4 a.m. and freaking boom! Sounds like a light pole has fallen or something has crashed. Naturally, we go check it out beyond the tree to see more of the road that led to business parking lots and whatnot. Now at 4 in the morning, we hear this insane sound and we find nothing, but we do find two small, tiny old Russian women. I asked because I liked their accent, and they were using walkers, wearing typical old lady crap, walking down this busy main road that was somehow dead for miles at this time. How? I don't know. Listening to them overly explain why they were walking to get their medication at CVS, how they do this every morning and always have. We asked if they heard anything. They said no, not at all. Shady. However, they had not always gotten our meds at 4 a.m. on 1st Avenue. We have been out there with not crap to do, and I grew up on the block. We would have seen them and known them in the past 15 plus years in that house. Anyway, I swear, we turn away, walk back across the streets, and then they're just gone. Just gone. I don't know. I don't care to know, but it was weird. Creepy file number 120, written by OG Wiz, the Ominous Forest Stalkers. Around 2007, 5 of us drove up this old dirt road. It's well known in the area, just outside of town, but takes about 45 minutes to drive down it. It's not maintained at all. We spent a lot of time on that road wandering the woods around it. Today, we drove about 30 minutes in and stopped. 3 of the guys in the car with us were going to relax with plants. We were all like 17, but myself and another guy weren't into those plants. The other guy especially. He got out of the car and started walking back towards town. Feeling bad, the driver wanted to at least drive him back to town. He refused to get in the car. He's a pretty stubborn person. Well, eventually, it turned into us all joking and being idiots. We're slowly driving next to him. He's messing around. The road was raised a bit from the tree line, which was about 20 feet from the road. The walking friend jumped down off the road and went to run into the woods, then came to a complete stop. That's when we all noticed a man standing there just in the tree line looking at us. It was weird. Walking friend got back into the road and continued walking. We're begging him to get in the car, but he won't. I look back, and now the man was on the road slowly following us up the road. Friend wouldn't get back into the car and we're still quite a distance from town. Another friend got out to walk with him at least. We drove slowly with them, an old man still following along. Keep in mind there was nothing on this road. Nothing. This dude was just standing there in the tree line. Very strange. Eventually, another man emerged from the woods and started following too. They followed us right up until the main road was visible and other cars could be seen. Then they retreated back into the woods. Who were these mysterious men? Bonus file written by G-Ragan13. Ghosts should never laugh. I was in high school, 10th grade, I believe 15 years old. I was babysitting my two younger brothers, 9 and 4 years old, on a Friday night. My mom and stepdad went to a local bar about 15 minutes away. We lived in a small township outside of a city in a very quiet neighborhood. To be honest, I don't remember the exact time, but it was after 10 p.m. Us three were sitting in our living room when the television started going through channels randomly. I specifically remember sitting on the couch looking at the remote across the room, placed on our recliner. I went over and grabbed the remote, but the television was not responding to my inputs. I then went to the TV and powered it off, taking a few steps back and wondering what the hell that was all about. My one brother asked me what happened, and I didn't know what to say. I sat back down on the couch and held the remote in my hand, giving the TV enough time to reboot. I don't know, I was young and thought it would work. A few minutes passed and I heard the scariest noise I've ever heard in my life. This cackling sound erupted in my living room. I remember jumping and looking around the room trying to pinpoint this very noise. My youngest brother started immediately crying, which prompted my other brother to grab him and pick him up. As the laughing continued, I pushed my brothers up the stairs and we all ran into my bedroom. As we ran in, I turned around to push my dresser in front of the door, which ended up failing miserably and the entire dresser came crashing down. At the moment, I didn't care because it felt safer with the dresser now against the door. The laughing continued for 5 more minutes, and I remember both my brothers were crying now and my eyes watered too. I held on to my Little League baseball bat, staring at the door as the laughing continued. I called my father and begged him to come home. I wish I would have called 911, but I didn't, and I'm not sure why. My father is a police officer, and I guess I just assumed he could get here quicker, and I felt safe with him. My dad showed up and searched around the house and found nothing. The laughing was gone, and I felt like an idiot trying to explain what had happened. I could tell he didn't believe me or my brothers. My mom and stepdad showed up not too long after, and also gave us the "you need some sleep" look. To this day, I have never heard a sound like that. The constant laughing. From time to time, I'll ask my brothers about it and it just gives us all chills. I have no idea what happened that night, but as time goes on, I like to make light of it. I know the story isn't amazing or award-winning, but to me, this was the most unexplained instance of fear in my life. Deep down, I'll always remember the urgent fear and panic caused by this cackling, pure laughter. Case file number 1297, written by Holy Bartender 83. The Crab Invasion of Toronto. Told this one a couple times, but it's a pretty good one, and I've never gotten a satisfying answer. The crab. So, a few years back, I woke up in the morning, went to take my meds, and I noticed something odd. There was a crab scuttling around my balcony. It was a decent size. The body was probably about the size of my hand, kind of brownish green with whitish legs and underbelly. Now, I live in a condo in downtown Toronto, and I'm quite high up. My balcony is not attached to anyone else's balcony, and my unit is on a side of the building that only has one row of balconies. There's also netting up that completely covers the open part to keep pigeons out, which was not damaged or torn. Toronto is also nowhere near an ocean. We have a lake, but it's quite polluted and there are no living crabs in it, and I live several kilometers away from it anyways. So how the hell did it get there? Where did it come from? A person couldn't have put it there. I live alone, and the only other person who has my key is my mother, who lives outside of Toronto, and my building's super. No one could have gotten onto my balcony unless they were Spider-Man, and even then, the netting would have been ripped or moved. A bird couldn't have dropped it there because of the netting, and besides, where would a bird have gotten a crab around here? I mean, unless it managed to sneak into a seafood restaurant or a supermarket and swipe a live crab, but that seems very unlikely. The crab couldn't have climbed up on its own, and again, where would it have come from? So this crab kinda just materialized on the balcony, and I have no idea how. Case file number 1298, written by Anonymous. From Poky to Flat. This is ridiculous, but I hope you find it mildly entertaining, at least. So I was looking at a photo of somebody I don't know very well, who was standing at the edge of a lake, and her capri and shirt were fairly wet from having splashed around a little in the lake, presumably. But the very first thing I had noticed was that her nipples were, well, very prominent, as in they were hard and pokey, and you could see the pokiness through the shirt. I know this sounds insanely lecherous, but I will tell you that I'm a straight female. The eyes notice what the eyes notice. Anyway, I could not help but notice those. I looked at the rest of the photo, the scenery, the other person in it, the lake. I looked back at her and I was like, yep, whoa, nips. I looked away from my phone for a minute and then I looked back at the photo and absolutely no nipple pokies were showing. None. I scrutinized the photo for like 2 minutes. Sorry. And there were no discernibly hard nipples. I can't believe I'm saying all these sentences, but there you have it. So her very prominent hard nipples, which I noticed literally first thing because it was so in your face, disappeared the second I looked away from my phone and then looked back. We now return to your regularly scheduled, non-creepy glitch posts. Case file number 1299, written by Sweet Bakery 22. Doppelgänger Double Trouble. This happened a few years ago, but we realized it while discussing it today. My dad showed me how he opened my door, and I immediately went, "That's not where my door handle is," and we told each other our story in detail. So this is what happened. My room's door had a curtain over it because I accidentally broke the door's glass over and over again since my childhood. So in order to have privacy, we have a green curtain over. While my dad was in front of the curtain, he saw a hand reaching for him through the curtain, so he thought it was me joking, and then he tried to hit the hand. When he tried to reach, the hand was moving backwards and Dad couldn't feel the hand at all. It was empty. The hand wasn't visible, only the movements of it. Me, I think I was 17 or 18 at the time, was in my bed reading. My dad randomly opened my door and asked, "That wasn't your hand, right? You're not baiting me." And I didn't know what he was talking about. I answered, "What hand? What are you talking about?" Then he told me a hand reached out for him under the curtain. I said no, it wasn't me. I was here reading my book. So from my perspective, I thought he had this experience outside of my room before entering it. While discussing it today, he told me he experienced it while he was in my room. This is his perspective. He says that he came to my room to do something and I was in my room too. I got up, opened the door, closed it, and went to the living room. A hand reached through the curtains for him, so he thought I was trolling and tried to hit it. Then he went to the living room because that's where he saw I went, and he saw me sitting there by myself. He asked me if the hand was mine, and I said no, it wasn't, aka my doppelganger. Then the doppelganger got up, went to my room again. Dad spent some time in the living room telling the story to my mom and so on. Then he came back and opened the door and asked me, "You're not baiting me, right? That really wasn't your hand?" He says that this is his second time asking it since I answered it the first one in the living room. I didn't answer the first one. He only asked me once, and I was in my bed while answering it. That's why all this time I thought the thing had happened outside my room while my dad swears he chased me to the living room because he thought I was trolling him. I was in my room the whole time and didn't even see my doppelganger myself, but my dad chased her. Asked her a question, she answered, went back to my room, so after some time passed, my dad came back to ask me again to make sure I wasn't trolling. I genuinely remember how I didn't understand his question. I was like, "Hand? What the hell hand? What are you talking about?" If I heard that question before, I wouldn't be that confused. A couple weeks before this, I saw my mom's doppelganger checking on me while I was sleeping. It was 7 a.m., so it was morning. I opened my eyes and saw her going back inside. I chased her to ask, "Mom, what happened?" Only to find my real mom was in a deep sleep. So this isn't something my dad created. There might be a shapeshifter in the house or something. Also, my mom is overweight, so she couldn't just jump right back into bed while I'm chasing her. She's too slow for that. Case file number 1300, written by Fishy Moo, My Wallet's Mysterious Tale. My wife had the week off of work, so she offered to drive me to work. I asked her to check if she had her keys, phone, and wallet before we left. She noticed her wallet wasn't in her pocket and asked me to help her look for it. I sort of recalled her putting it on the mostly cleared kitchen island the previous evening. It wasn't there. We moved a few things off of it, but still couldn't find it. Both of us thought that she might have dropped it while she was out shopping the previous day and to call around the stores when they opened. So we went about our day and she drove me to work. She was quite disappointed to have to spend one of her days off calling the bank to cancel all of her cards, going to ICBC, auto insurance provider, to get a replacement driver's license, and going to her work to get a new key card. She stopped by the 2 stores she visited the previous day, but both had no such wallet in their lost and found. She decided to head back home so she could grab her passport and other ID in case she was asked for it. She walked into our condo and saw the wallet sitting alone on the kitchen island, in the exact spot that I remembered it was. We have security cameras, but the footage during that hour was corrupted and wasn't viewable. Neither of us can explain what the hell happened. No one has spare keys except my mother-in-law, who was out of the country. No friends stayed over. The only logical explanation is that one of our cats took it off the kitchen island, hid it, and then brought it back while we were out. We definitely had some odd situations happen in that condo. This is the freakiest one. Bonus file written by Isoserum, The Asthma Diagnosis Miracle. When I was maybe 10 or 11, my mom and I lived in an apartment with 2 bedrooms, down the hall from one another. We each slept with our door closed and each had a fan on in our room for white noise. One night, my mom woke me up around 2 a.m. and told me we had to go to the hospital right now. I was so confused because I felt fine, but she was just very serious and insistent. We get there and my mom tells them I'm having trouble breathing, which again, I didn't think I was. Turns out my pulse oximeter reading was like 80 and was quickly fluctuating between high 70s and high 80s. It is not supposed to drop below 90. I remember the nurse took the measurement with like 3 different oximeters and then the doctor showed up really quickly afterwards. That's when I was diagnosed with asthma. It's just so strange to me because my mom just woke up in the middle of the night with a gut feeling that told her, "You need to take your son to the hospital." And the feeling was so strong that she just didn't even question it. Our rationale is that maybe she heard me wheezing in her sleep and her mama bear instincts woke her up. But how could that have happened through 2 closed doors and with 2 white noise fans on? And she says my breathing sounded fine when she woke me up. She just had a strong feeling that I couldn't breathe. Bonus file written by Western Manager 2657. When dreams guide your path. I was 15 on vacation with my parents and 2 of my friends. The first night we were there, I had the strangest feeling where I was so uncomfortable in my own body, and the uncomfortable feeling and pain would subside every time I tried to figure out what was wrong. My brain landed on something about my dad, so then the pain went away some more, and then I thought, okay, what? Surgery? No, that's not right. Coughing? And the pain went away completely, and I just figured my dad's gonna get a cold or something and I could finally go to sleep. The rest of the week was fine, until last night. I could not sleep at all. Packing up the van the next morning, we had a roof carrier and I had a backpack with my laptop and camera and handed it to my dad to put in the carrier. But as soon as it was in there, I was like, no, give it back, and put it underneath the seat in the van tucked away. So I fell asleep on the way home and had this dream. I'm in a hotel room and I can't move. This guy I haven't talked to in a year comes in and hands me my phone and says, "This is from your dad." And I wake up to my mom frantically trying to open the door. We're in the middle of the highway. There's blood everywhere. All of our suitcases are flung about and we just got into a car accident. I get out and start walking to this field and I see the roof carrier flew a good 30 feet off and hit a tree. Then fast forward to the hospital. My dad and I are in the same hospital and the doctor comes into my room and hands me my phone and says, "This is from your dad." I was like, okay, that's weird. Then my dad and I stay at the hotel that night while we wait for my mom to get discharged the next morning. And as soon as I walked into the hotel room, it was the exact same room in my dream. And that night, and for weeks after, I couldn't move because I had massive bruises all over from my luggage falling on top of me. I didn't understand why that guy was in my dream until he randomly messaged me 6 years later, and now we're engaged. I don't know how my brain created that dream of those events before they happened, and it's the strangest thing that's ever happened to me since. Case notes file 1293. When the universe plays doctor. I have to admit I was struggling not to burst out in laughter at the first part, with the doctor proclaiming it's huge. Not what you ever want to hear from a doctor. I don't know how many words of comfort I can truly offer though. I mean, to have so many tumors? I can't process that. I'm just so sorry. You're still around and kicking though. Tough as hell cookie for sure. I think this is one of those universes in the great ocean of the multiverse where you miraculously survive it all. So this is the universe where you, from other universes, are being jumped into. Pretty cool. Case notes file 1294. The Pier of Peril. Another example of a guardian angel event taking place in the form of an animal. A good boy dog, in this case. And in many cases too. Sometimes cats as well. I do believe it was a true guardian angel event because this was the man's dog. They're infinitely loyal pets, even to unworthy masters. The only thing that could have tilted the dog to help you was as a direct act from your own protector, possessing or maybe influencing the dog. It's just so cool how powerful these guardian angels are. It's good to know we're always protected. And now time for the quote of the day. I get up every morning determined to both change the world and have one hell of a good time. Sometimes this makes planning my day difficult. E.B. White. You ever have one of those days where you're extremely motivated, but at the same time, you just want to veg out and have a relaxing day, watch some TV shows, but you always feel motivated too? It's like this itch in the back of your mind that you can't scratch and you have to just go run 10 miles before you do anything fun. I kind of feel like that every day. It's hard to square it, and I don't know how I pick which I'm going to do, just be lazy or be very productive. I guess I tend to do both interchangeably, but I feel both at the same time. So I guess that's a good thing, right? Enables you to always enjoy life and still be productive. Best of both worlds. Case notes file 1295. Glimpsing into the Victorian epoch. So that's exactly what I believed happened. A multiverse viewing event, not bound to concurrent time. I believe transit between the multiverses outside the boundary of normal spacetime. I mean, it literally is, because spacetime is localized within a universe. If you can imagine the multiverse as little universe are like droplets or bubbles floating in the great void, well, in the void between these universes, there's nothing. I mean, there's actually nothing, not even space and time. So there would be no time outside of it. So the last part is critical. Time itself, a map of sequential events. Maybe the future is more vague and undetermined. There's so many possibilities. That's the whole point of the multiverse. Every branching path, everything that could happen does happen in a different universe. But in terms of what has already happened, well, that's almost like a movie. You could just pick a spot and start over from there. Just see a hologram, a projection of what happened, or even a snapshot, if you will. In these peering events, what intrigues me so much is the notion of controlling it. Think about it. If we reach a point centuries from now, most likely, centuries, thousands of years maybe, where we've invented devices that can replay events from our universe or across the multiverse, other universes too, the possibilities would be endless. You think about it, it would be like a device that has infinite TV channels that can play anything you could possibly, literally anything that could have possibly happened. You could just flip a channel and tune in. That's a very interesting idea. Case notes for the bonus file. Inside the Room of Fear. I think there are so many spirits and life forms that are just out of reach from the mortal plane, but they want to cross over. I can only infer that doing so requires immense amounts of energy, so it doesn't happen often. Maybe it's spiritual energy, not just like kinetic energy that makes the room feel colder. And by that I mean a kind of life force from humans, the soul, whatever it is we can't currently detect that is responsible for animating our sentient experience in this world, in this universe. The soul is what most people would say. If that's the case, you have to sap life force, the soul, whatever's binding us to the real world or the religious, heaven, I don't know. Maybe most spirits don't want to tap into that, considering it a kind of theft, unless it regenerates, and even then it would still kind of be theft, but maybe it doesn't regenerate. And maybe spirits intuitively know this, so that most, unless they're evil, won't try to tap into that. And I don't think most spirits are evil. I mean, most humans aren't, so why would most spirits be? Maybe they go a bit wonky over time, but not evil. And now time for the quote of the day. If the only prayer you ever say in your whole life is, thank you, that would suffice. Meister Eckhart. Yeah, thank you is a powerful word, isn't it? People don't say it enough these days. Thank you, please, the common courtesies and manners, they go a long way. It's not just about saying the words, though. You have to mean it deep down. If someone does something nice for you, thank them. The manners and courtesy is a ritual habit. It's more than that. It goes deep inside of you. If you are really thankful, it's not something you even have to think beyond even being it a habit. You just want to say it. It's not like muscle memory. If someone does something nice for me, I want to thank them. And if I want a favor from them, I would say please. Part of that too is understanding that maybe they don't want to or they can't, and that's fine. I would say there is a certain atmosphere of entitlement that people have these days that stretches so profoundly within them. I don't know how to break through it, peel it off like a layer of an onion that is rotting. You want to get back to the proper layer that is not rotted. Not an easy thing to do, but we need to try. And I guess the best thing you can do is just lead by example. If you want others to behave with manners and treat each other nicely, well, start by doing that yourself. Question file 1296. The Russian Time Travelers. So it's that boom sound that makes a lot of sense to me. Remember, the atmosphere of the Earth is all over at relatively equal pressure in any given spot. So if you were to suddenly introduce mass, like two small Russian women, into an area, literal materialization from another universe or timeline, then all of that atmosphere has to get out of the way, at virtually instantaneous speeds too, enough to create a shockwave which you boys heard. Heck, maybe it isn't two Russian women, maybe it's alien imposters beaming down, using them as disguises. That said, either answer while making some technical sense because of the boom isn't all that compelling. I mean, odd place to teleport in to scout as aliens, or if you're Russian time travelers, posing as old ladies or really are old ladies just visiting a specific area? I don't know, it seems a bit odd. Or maybe it is just like a multiversal transit event and temporary, but then it makes you wonder, why don't you hear the boom sound effect in other stories? Where people are crossing between parallel universes, somehow, I guess, occupying the exact same spot? The boom sound would only play if there's new mass introduced into an area. If we're crossing universes and we're in the same spot, just like our soul, then there would be no mass introduced, just energy. But, in the cases where there's DOP, things moving between, physical mass moving between universes, that should create some sound effect. Pretty loud one most of the time too. Interesting. I don't know. Okay, so it's for the creepy file number 120. The Ominous Forest Stalkers. This could be a case of odd people defending their property lines. That's been known to happen. How they knew you boys were there is unclear though, as your description doesn't afford a house being nearby. So they were just camping the edge, like protecting their line from there. It's not impossible. I don't think they were monsters, but I do think leaving immediately was the right choice. Sometimes people will be crazy, Honestly, that's the main point, right? Sometimes monsters are preferable to the wickedness of man. Okay, so for the bonus file. Ghosts should never laugh. One thing that irks me tremendously is when parents discount the experiences of their children. Sure, sometimes they might lie. Usually in an attempt to gain access to sweets or avoid punishment. That was my thing, the sweets thing. My mom literally had not the meme, but like the cliche of cookie jars on the top of the fridge. So I would climb on the counter next to the fridge and go and get the cookie jar. Or sometimes like a plastic container of cookies. I always loved sweets. That's never changed. It's only increased in potency as I got older. Anyways, for something like this though, there'd be no reason to make it up. Especially, it's not just one, it's multiple children. To just discount all of them like they're crazy. Collective delusion, no. Listen to your kids. I think it simply boils down to an unwillingness to entertain anything beyond the normal square assigned by society. Like I said, it's irksome, right? As for the entity laughing like this, I don't know what it is, if it's a malformed spirit or something else, but I'd never sleep in that house again. There is something very creepy about laughter, like malevolent laughter. You can tell when a laugh, it's not laughing at a joke, it's laughing at like, you're gonna die or be injured or something. Not the good kind of laugh. And now time for the quote of the day. Friendship is being there when someone's feeling low, and not being afraid to kick them. Randy K. Milholland. When a friend is down, you gotta get a couple jabs in, just to make sure they're tender. No, but really. Obviously be there for a friend when they're down, but I think there's a certain level of humor that is necessary to bring someone back up. Life can be extremely difficult and brutal, so you want to be able to be there for a friend and not just support them directly, technically, but also make their situation feel more lively and alleviate the weight that's on their shoulders, and humor is the best way to do that. Humor really is the ultimate weapon of positivity. Caissons file 1297. The Crab Invasion of Toronto. So I would say, if you did live near an area of water where there are actual crabs in the water, not like the Lake of Toronto, then yeah, maybe a bird plucked it up and just flew over the building you are and then dropped it down onto the balcony. I'm not sure about the net you're talking about, like if it surrounds the entire balcony area, even like above it, it's almost like the crab materialized through the net, or maybe just from a different universe. You could have parallel universe crossovers, but the thing with that I keep thinking about now is in DOP or like renders into a universe where there was no mass prior, it should create a sound effect, a really loud boom, because all the air where the mass is now occupying has to move out of the way. It creates a shockwave because it has to move so fast. As I get picturing a meteor coming into the atmosphere, well, it doesn't just come in, no matter how fast it's moving. The air, the atmosphere itself has to move out of the way. That creates a lot of friction and heat, and indeed a shockwave, which you hear pretty instantly. So unless this was like a ninja crab that snuck in through the front door, through the condo building, no, I don't think that happened. So it has to be DOP, right? But I'm just trying to square in my head how that fits with the absence of a sound effect from the air moving out of the way. Caissons file 1298. From Poky to Flat. So is this it? The funniest story I've ever read? Something about the way it's written, it's not just the fact that she's talking about nipples, which everyone has. It's not really that big a deal, but it's funny nevertheless. It is hard to miss if you're looking at a picture and they're, just there prominently. But yeah, it is definitely a glitch if you see them and then look away and look back and they're not there anymore. Did the information switch universes? Because this has to be another universal switcheroo, where either the author of this glitch switched universes themselves into one where the same picture was taken, but the girl in question didn't have pronounced mammalian glands. It could also be that the information was incorrectly transmitted between universes, and then it's reset back. I think that happens pretty often, especially with digital information, which could make a transition easily enough. Caissons file 1299. Doppelgänger Double Trouble. Yeah, this is more than a doppelganger story, because your mom also was impersonated, or maybe shapeshifted into, by some entity. Or it could even be an entity that's playing on your mind, the mind of your dad and your own mind. The final option is once more a multiversal error, where you're seeing into a different universe. I don't think you're actually moving to it in this case. It's simply the fact that pocket of space-time where the membrane between the multiverse is very thin in your area, in your home. And so you're seeing yourself, and your dad was seeing yourself, you're seeing your mom twice, doubled over, because it's different universes. What triggers it? Maybe just like in that precise moment, the membrane is so thin and so close that you're just peering through it. I guess that could be the case, but it's weird. The trigger is unknown. It seems so random. But it does seem more pronounced in certain locations. Or it could really be a doppelganger. And now time for the quote of the day. The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious. It is the source of all true art and science. Albert Einstein. The unknown is both scary, but also like spicy food. It's what makes life worth living, and what is so exciting about it. If you know everything, everything's solved. Mystery is the je ne sais quoi of life. Without it, who cares? With it, everything matters. So go out there and explore a new area, a new park, a new store you've never been to. The unknown will infuse your life with excitement. Caissons file 1300. My wallet's mysterious tale. So it's pretty obvious that the universe itself likes to play games. I mean, in this case, I don't think it was an entity. I think the universal code is malleable. By whoever runs the show at the top layer, sometimes they just want to play pranks, either with a wallet or burritos or wedding rings, whatever it may be. They make it seem like something isn't there, and maybe it really truly isn't there, until they re-enable. They press a button, and it reappears, just like that. What else is going on here? Because of where it left off, and then it came back, there's no other explanation. And it did so in a way where your wife first had to go through all the crappy day of canceling her cards and getting a new driver's license and all that. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think they wanted her to maybe suffer is going too far, but just to feel annoyed, frustrated. Very frustrating indeed. Okay, so it's for the bonus file. The asthma diagnosis miracle. So this is that deep-rooted quantum entanglement connection that we have with loved ones. And I think in the dream state, it's even more pronounced. Or maybe not more pronounced. It's that we enable or allow that connection to shine through when we're in that dormant state. Not dormant. Our brain is super active in this dreamlike state. And because of that, we allow that part of our brain that is connected to other people that we love for the information to flow in. And yeah, you perceive it, or your mom just perceived it as an emotion, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. And in fact, to the contrary, right? It was extremely accurate. So trust your gut more, not just when you're sleeping. It'll probably save your life, and maybe the life of other people that you love. Okay, so it's for the bonus file. When dreams guide your path. So I've been on vacations too with my mom. I think once when I was 10, before my parents divorced, when I was like 13 or 14. We did go to Florida on a vacation, and I felt uncomfortable, but I think it's just being in a new area. Sometimes the feeling of uncomfortableness isn't like a sign, but in this case, boy was it. And not even just to connect with someone else that was in pain or would be in pain, but even not storing your laptop in the above compartment of the car, which was flung away. If it was in there, your laptop probably would have been destroyed. So this was a whole bundle of useful, future buffered information you allowed your conscious mind to utilize. Maybe we all have this ability and we just suppress it, but I do think there are some minds that just enable it better, or maybe process that information better and distill it down to the conscious mind to be utilized. And those minds are very powerful, as you can see here. And now time for the quote of the day. Promote yourself, but do not demote another. Israel Salanter. How much effort does it take to promote yourself without suppressing others? It's like that state of panic and survival that people have, but at all times, where like if you're drowning in the ocean and someone comes up to save you, the natural instinct is to push them down, to elevate yourself. And I think this applies in all of life, where people are so prone to suppress others to get ahead instead of bettering themselves because, well, the latter is a bit harder, isn't it? Build yourself up, bring others along, or at least don't push them down. Like the video, subscribe, hit the bell. Kinetic Symphony signing off.